Hey everyone, hopefully you are healthy and just staying at home. And here's our first set of notes. We are going to talk about functions this unit, and this is going to be about function tables. If you take a look here, a function table is a relationship between two or more variables. So the input is the x value, and that's known as the independent variable. It's not dependent on anything else. And in this case, you can see in this table that would be time in years. And then if you take a look at the output or the y value, that would be the car's value in thousands. So the car's value is dependent upon the number of years old that the car is. So the y value is dependent on the x value, but not vice versa. So if you take a look here, when you first drive the car off the lot, it might be worth $32,000. But then after 1 year, it drops down to $27.2 thousand and so forth. So we can actually complete a function table. And so the way we do that is using the function rule, also known as an expression. And then we take a look at our inputs and our outputs and fill in the missing values. So let's take a look at some examples. We're going to fill in some function tables. Ignore the random letters that I've typed in. It's just holding my text box place so I can find it. Okay, so if we take a look at our first table right here, we've got an input of or x value of 0, 2, or 4. And then my function rule is x plus 3, also known as expression, x plus 3. And then the output is empty. And we can fill this in by actually figuring out the function rules with the inputs. So instead of x plus 3, I'm going to use my first input of 0 plus 3. And 0 plus 3 is going to give me the answer 3. All right, so if you take a look at the next one, my input is 2. So I'm going to do 2 plus 3, because that's the function rule, x plus 3, and I'm going to get the answer 5. And then if you take a look at my function rule here with an x value of 4, is 4 plus 3. So my answer is going to be 7. Okay, if you take a look at my next table, I've got a two-step expression or function rule. It's 3x plus 1. And in this case, we've got a 3 times x plus 1. So we've got 3 times, and then our first input is 0. So 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is actually going to be 1. Okay, the next one, I'm going to use the function rule, and I'm going to do 3 times, and my input is now 1, or my x is now 1, plus 1. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Okay, and then my last one, I'm going to do 3 times my new x value, which is 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. All right, we've got another one down here. My new function rule is 2x minus 1. So I'm going to do 2 times x minus 1. So I'm going to take 2 times my input, or my x value is 7, minus 1. So 2 times 7 is 14, minus 1 is 13. All right. And then I'm going to do my function rule, 2 times x, which is 5, minus 1. So 2 times 5 is 10, minus 1 is 9. Okay, and then I'm going to use my function rule again, 2 times x being 4, minus 1. So 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. Okay, now these other input-output tables or function tables, my rule is x minus 3 here, but you'll see that I'm missing the input, but I've got the output. So in this case, I'm guessing the input based on the output. So I can use inverse operations to solve. So if my rule is minus 3 to each of the x's, I can take my output and I can add 3, and that should give me the correct answer. So 7 plus 3 is 10. So this should be an input of 10. And let's check it. 10 minus 3. Yep, that's 7. Okay, now I can take my output of 4 and I'm going to use inverse operations. So instead of subtracting 3, I'm going to add 3. So my input should be 7. Let's check it. 7 minus 3. Yep, that's 4. All right, and then if you take a look at the next one, it's 1. So I'm going to use inverse operations plus 3. So that's 4. So my rule would be, or my expression would be 4 minus 3. And yep, that gives me 1. All right, we can do it again down here with the rule 5x, which would be 5 times x. I have an output of 0 there, so I'm going to use inverse operations here, and I'm going to think, what times 5 is 0, or 0 divided by 5, which is, in this case, 0. So I'm going to say 5 times 0 is, yep, 0. Okay, let's try it with 10. So I'm going to use inverse operations, divide by 5 instead of multiplying by 5. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. Let's try it and see if it works. My rule is 5 times x, so 5 times 2. Yep, that's 10. All right, and then the last one here is 15. So I'm going to use inverse operations, divide by 5. And my answer is 3. 5 times 3. Yep, that's 15. All right, let's try this one over here. It's a little more complex. So I've got 3x minus 1, and I've got my outputs, but I don't have inputs. So I can kind of reverse it and use inverse operations. So instead of doing 3 times x minus 1, I'm going to work backwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the 1 to each of those, and then I'm going to divide by the 3. So if I think 14, and then I'm going to add 1, I get 15. So then I'm going to divide by 3, and that's going to give me 5. So let's try 5 here. So I'm going to do 3 times the x value of 5 minus 1. 3 times 5 is 15, minus 1 is 14. Yeah, it worked. Okay, so then let's try 8. So with 8, working backwards, I'm going to add 1, so that's going to give me 9. And then when I divide by 3, that's going to give me 3. Let's see if my 3 works. So the function rule is 3x minus 1. So I'm going to do 3 times my x value of 3 minus 1. Well, 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. Yeah, it worked. Okay, let's try the next one. So 5. So the rule is 3x minus 5. So I'm going to work backwards. Instead of going minus 5, I'm going to add, or minus 1, I'm going to add 1. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Divide it then by 3, the opposite of multiplying by 3, and I get 2. Let's try it. So if I take my function rule and do 3 times my x value of 2, minus 1, well, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 1 is 5. Hey, we did it. All right, let's try this one down here. All right, my function rule is x divided by 3. So I'm going to do all of my inputs divided by 3 to get my outputs. So I'm going to do 12 divided by 3, and my output is 4. I'm going to try 9 now, which is my new x value, divided by 3, and my output is 3. And then let's try 6. 6 is my input, divided by 3, and I get 2. All right, so you have some practice with input-output tables on Khan Academy, and you're going to have a little bit more practice with functions yet this week, so look ahead. Feel free to email me at emiller@mvcsd.us. Feel free to contact me on the Remind, or feel free to message me on Schoology.